our acts. The sea can be deep for our diving. Hope comes and stops us in our tracks. Bravely we prove in our striving, trudging together each day. Where there's a will, there's a way.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Raw Recovery. My name is Gary Vittorelli. I will be your host. This is a Trudging Together podcast. And today we have a special guest. His name is Eric. Him and I are both in Overeaters Anonymous. We're both home group. And Eric has an amazing story and hope. And so, Eric, if you like, it's your show. Go take it away.
Well, thank you, man. I appreciate being asked to share. Anytime my experience can help even just one person, that's awesome. You know, I appreciate everything the program has given me, and I'm happy to give back to anybody that's suffering as I have. You know, I've been battling with this issue with food and weight since I was 5 years old. Basically, is when it kind of kicked in. My parents decided to separate, and I was taken from my mother and thrust into a different environment. I was living with a woman called stepmother now, and she's in a different house in a different town. And as a child, of course, they don't give you options. It's not like they had a conversation or anything. I just kind of woke up in somebody else's house and somebody else's bed one day, and what I didn't understand as a kid was that I'm the and this is, I don't know if you can follow this or not, but I'm the product of the other woman. My mother is the other woman. While my dad was still married, he, just, I guess, left his family, met my mom, then they, got a place together, and she already had my older brother with another man. And, we were just, there, we were living together, and then all of a sudden we weren't. But I didn't know anything. I didn't know the backstory. Coming into that, I didn't understand why they didn't like my mom. Nobody in that house liked my mom, and they weren't like cruel to me. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't like they, I wasn't like Cinderella or anything like that. But I'm sure they withheld their true feelings and what they really wanted to say, and I appreciate that. I really do, because that would have just made it even worse. But even as a kid, I knew that they didn't like her. They didn't want to talk about my mom. They didn't like me talking about my mom, and so that was hard. And so I turned to food. Honestly, I turned to food, and it was awesome. I loved that I can eat something and feel better about myself in that moment. And I thought that was the answer. As a kid, I was like, yeah, this is it. This is how you survive, man. You just eat more food. Just eat more food. Yeah. And so I did, and it was great. I found that copious amounts of food, it didn't really matter what it was. It's a score if it's anything with sugar, obviously, and then just like any other addict, I needed more. It wasn't enough, the things that they had in the house. I needed more than that. So I resorted to, kind of stealing in the house, as it were. I would steal whatever, wonderful thing they had, and whatever food it was, and I would, hide it in my room, and then I'd go back later and I'd eat it. I'd like cover my tracks kind of thing. And that wasn't enough either. So I started stealing money. My dad was in construction, and he'd come home from a day's work and take a shower, and he'd leave his pants, outside the bathroom on the floor. And I'd rummage through his pants looking for loose change or maybe a bill or two, And they eventually let me go see my mom, and I did the same thing to her. I'd go through her purse and I'd steal money from her, although it wasn't necessary, because my mom, I only got to see her on Friday night, and I have to come back Saturday in like the morning or afternoon, and she let me eat whatever the hell I wanted to eat, And that was all fantastic. You know, that for me, that was just like, that was Christmas going to my mom
every week.
Every week, you know, there would be all kinds of, you know, just whatever you can imagine. It was there. One time I opened up her freezer and there was literally a bucket of ice cream from Baskin Robbins. I don't mean like carton. I mean, one of those buckets that they scoop out and give you an ice cream. It was like, I was like, my mouth dropped. I was like, oh my God, this is the best day of my life.
There is a God.
Yeah, that was crazy. And so, I really loved that part of it. And then, as I was putting on more and more weight, I quickly realized that this is a problem, you know, and people were making fun of me. Even my family was making fun of me, you know, and it was a joke. It wasn't like, I don't know that it was out of, you know, being cruel. I don't want to say it like that, but you know, I would smile sometimes and I'd be crying inside, you know, and I would make a joke about myself too. I like to joke about it because I thought if I joked about it, then people, you know, wouldn't realize how horribly bad I feel inside, you know? So I just joked about that kind of thing. And I didn't really address the real issues, and I wasn't really encouraged to do so. You know, my dad was raised during the Depression era, and they had the policy of, you know, kids should be seen but not heard, you know, especially if there's company. Get out of the house, go play, you know. And we weren't really, you know, nobody ever really discussed, you know, how do you feel, honey? Are you okay? You know, I mean, if I hurt myself physically, that's different. Wasn't like, you know, what's going on, you know, and nobody could understand that perhaps I was a child that suffered from depression, you know, because there was you know, at least in my household and my world, that didn't really exist, you know. I'm assuming if you go back in time and say your kid's depressed, I guess they would get him some Robitussin, you know.
Yeah,
take that every 4 hours. You won't be depressed anymore. You'll be fine. No anxiety. Yeah, just pour some of that on it, and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
Don't worry. Have something to eat. You know.
Exactly.
So yeah, it was getting really bad. Gaining weight, and you know, my mom would buy me clothes for the school year, and then in September, you know, we'd start school, and you know, we bought the clothes in the summertime and school would start and the clothes don't fit. Obviously, you knew where I was going with that. And it was devastating to me as a kid. I was humiliated. I mean, I love those clothes. These are brand new clothes for school. And I was so excited for them and I don't fit in them, you know, and that just made it worse. You know, and I found out that if there's something go around called a diet, and that would help you to lose all your weight. And then I can fit in my clothes, and then I'd feel good about myself, and maybe I won't have these dark feelings. I'm having like these dark thoughts and these dark feelings all the time. You know, I just felt so isolated and depressed, and it was not easy to do, you know, to isolate and compulsively overeat, household full of people and a world full of people. But, you know, I did the best I could. You know, I was dedicated to my disease, and I was willing to go to any lengths to make sure I can isolate, compulsively overeat to the best of my ability. You know, every opportunity, eating off of people's plates, eating out of the trash cans, you know, whatever. You know, they had Coke bottles. If any of the Coke bottles, that's hey man, that's food right there. I'm going to take that, cash that in, get me some food. You know, go down to the 7-Eleven at the corner. You know, you know, any job I did, any money I got for Christmas or birthdays or whatever, I just looked at that as, man, I'm going to have some food. That's food. That's all food, you know? And so I tried these diets, and I started drinking diet sodas and, you know, and all that stuff because it didn't have sugar. Apparently there's a problem with sugar, and that's bad. I equated sugar with being bad, not like bad for you, but meaning that I'm a bad person because I want it and I eat it so much. You know, and so it also fed to that darkness and that depression, you know, because I couldn't stop. You know, I would sell candies, chocolate bars for band when I was in school, and I would eat them all. My parents would have to pay, you know, and I did all this weird stuff with it. I mean, as a kid, I learned how to make a cake, like a whole cake. And then I would just eat the dang thing, and it just perpetuated itself. And these diets that they came up with, I binged on the diet foods, people, may not like, like Weight Watchers frozen dinners. I think they're amazing. Anything that's food is awesome, and if it's diet, you can have more of it, which is even better.
Exactly.
Because if it's diet, it's good for you. Why would that be bad? Have as much as you want, and they took the sugar out of ice cream. Eventually they took the sugar out of pie, and so I would just eat tons of that stuff. Everything I was binging on switched from things that were naturally, sweetened to unnatural sweetened. Right. And I thought in my head, I'm doing good, and then I would go to a gym or something, or I would exercise and burn out because I would, it wasn't the right type of exercise and it was too much because I thought that's what you needed to do. I didn't have really any kind of instruction there. I just kind of went off on my own and did what I thought was best. And all along, everything that I was doing was just making things worse. That's really all that happened is things got worse and they continued to get worse. I tried to continue to fix myself, because I knew if I could control the food and control the weight, that I'm going to be happy, and thin, and everybody's going to like me, and I'm going to have a million friends, and I won't be so lonely, and this is going to be a great world, and my family's going to really appreciate me, and all that stuff, and it was always equated with that, and so what ended up happening is it just continued to get worse. And you would think, oh, it can't get worse than that. But it does, it just always gets worse. And it goes to a level of worse that you can't fathom or calculate in your head, because you think, oh, it'll probably just get this bad. But then it surpasses that, and it just, and it's just devastating. It crushes me. And I found that this isn't working, but I don't know what else to do. So I kept doing it. I just, I'd try to diet and then I would say, oh, to hell with this. And I would go back to the food. And then I checked into rehab with the help of my folks back in 85 for eating disorders. Right. And there I went to an Overeaters Anonymous meeting because that's what they do. They take you to a meeting every day of the week. And I had been to one before when I was 11 back in 81, but it was not for me. I was just too young, I guess, or, the reality of OA is that there's no magic diet plan. There's no magic exercise regimen. And I say magic because I mean like, by Monday you'll be thin and you only have to exercise once a year. That's just magic. That's not reality. It's fantasy, But, so yeah, it wasn't for me, but yeah, I went to this eating disorders place and what they had was a nutritionist that resonated with me. They also had this woman there that helped us to exercise properly. She wouldn't like kill us. She would say, let's go for a walk. Let's just go for a walk. Everybody up, we're going for a walk. And we'd all go walk across the park and we walk around this, this path around the park. And it was like a mile or two or whatever. And then we'd come back and that was it, and that with the help of the nutritionist and the exercise coach, I lost weight while I was in treatment, and I was feeling great. I felt fantastic, and I was going to the meetings, which is a huge waste of time, because everybody talks too damn much. There's some person's talking and then they stop talking and then somebody raises their hand and they call on that person and that son of a bitch starts talking and then somebody else raises their hand and they start talking too. And I'm a teenager here thinking, shut up.
Exactly.
Why can't we just sit here and just be quiet? Maybe we could take a nap together. Everybody just sit in your chair, close your eyes for an hour and a half, and then the buzzer goes off. We wake up and then we can go back to our treatment facility. Why do we have to talk so much? I hated that about this and I got nothing out of it. Everybody was like, blah, 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 spirituality, blah, blah, blah. I work the steps, blah, blah, blah. My sponsor is amazing. Oh, shut up. Because I wasn't doing any of that stuff, which was fine. In program, you don't have to get a sponsor and follow direction and be abstinent. You don't have to work on yourself. You don't have to be a better person. Nothing. You don't have to really have a relationship with God. You don't have to do anything because of the third tradition, which states the only requirement for OA membership is an honest desire to stop eating compulsively. Right. So with that, you can come and go as you please. You know, it's an open door policy. And I appreciate that, because that's all that I was willing to do, was go to program sometimes because I was forced to, and then, you know, stay on my diet, because I had that. I came in with the diet mentality, and that's what resonated with me. That's what I took from treatment, was that. But another thing I took from treatment too is the counselors there. You know, we had therapists and psychiatrists there. And that was really awesome, because for the first time in my life, I was encouraged to share my thoughts and feelings in a safe environment. And I found out that my thoughts and feelings were actually important and valid. And nobody ever made me feel like that, or maybe helped me to realize or see that, you know, until I was in treatment. So that was a game changer for me, you know, to be able to actually, and they taught us how to dialogue, you know, Gary, when you say this, I feel like that. I would like to set a boundary with you, Gary. And, you know, I'd like you to please, you know, while we're in, you know, having a friendship together, that you don't engage in that conversation with me, because it makes me feel like this, you know, and I want to continue a friendship with you, but it's not going to be possible if you can't respect my boundaries. You know, I mean, that's a weird kind of programming, what is it? Psychiatrist speak or whatever, but
that, right?
Yeah. But it really, you know, it helped to set a foundation for me to start to think about working on things like that, because it was important because I didn't know how to put the words together on my own. You know, I didn't know how to express myself and tell people, you know, you're hurting me. You're making me angry, or I'm upset because of this, you know. I only stuck to the, you know, the standard, which was, how are you doing, Eric? Oh, I'm just fine. Good to see you. You know, come on in. I'm going to lay on the floor. You go ahead and wipe your feet on me before you go. And anytime you want to come and use and abuse me, I'm here for you. You know, and that's just that wasn't acceptable any longer. But I didn't know what to do about it, and that helped. That really did. You know, to help me to change that trajectory of that, you know, having relationships with people, which has nothing to do with food or weight, but, you know, there's very little issues in my life that have to do with food and weight. It's, you know, everything is because of the way I think and the way I act and behave. But in my head, it's always because of the food and weight, you know, because I've always had that diet mentality. I came into OA with the diet mentality: control the food, control the weight, and you'll be fine, you know? And so, that wasn't the case. And so I didn't, you know, get a sponsor. I didn't follow a sponsor's direction. I didn't do any of the things that people do that are in recovery, that have experienced a better life for themselves, and by extension, a better life for the people in their lives, you know, because we actually affect other people. I didn't really even know that. I just thought I was hurting myself. I didn't know that I was hurting other people just by what I was doing to myself, because it turns out there's people in my life that actually do care about me, like genuinely care about me. Didn't know what the hell to do about it, though. You know, I imagine that my mom would just cry herself to sleep every night, wondering if I'd even wake up the next day at a certain point in my life, you know, because it got really bad. But I couldn't do anything about it. And I certainly couldn't do it for you or for my family. You know what I mean? I couldn't make a promise I couldn't keep, and I wasn't going to try, you know? And so when I went through that treatment program, I came out and I continued on that path of that diet mentality. I came to programs sometimes because it was fun, you know, because you know, it happened to be a lot of young people in the 80s that I can hang out with, you know. So I go to a meeting to blah 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 blah, but afterwards we like go and hang out. We go to a coffee shop or, you know, a restaurant or something like that and have fellowship, or we go to somebody's house, or there was a party or something like that. It was like, you know, teenagers in OA. You know, I didn't hang out with teenagers from my school. You know, I didn't have any friends really at school, but I had friends in OA, and they understood. You know, it was really fun to be a compulsive overeater with other compulsive overeaters my age. You know, but I never. Yeah, absolutely. But I never worked the program. And a couple years later, I started putting on weight, so I checked myself back into rehab. Because I thought, yeah, that'll fix it. But it didn't. When I came out, I started binging right away, and then my dad passed away shortly thereafter. And I went into a depression that was so dark. I mean, I don't even know how I'm still alive. It was just, I was just I was like a zombie going through the days, and I dove face into the deep end of, compulsion. I needed a lot of assistance here, and that was always my go-to. So I compulsively overate like crazy, put on weight. I wasn't working. I wasn't going to school, wasn't doing anything, and there was no point to my existence whatsoever. And then, my friend, was on a motorcycle, and he'd never been on one before. He got on it was actually my motorcycle, and he drove across the street and he dumped it. And I was afraid for him. So I wanted to run to his aid. And I realized that, really quickly that I can't run. I'm not even in my 20s yet, and I can't run across the street to help my friend. And I didn't even know, that I was isolating and compulsively overeating, and not, I wasn't really moving around at all. I wasn't exercising at all. So I didn't realize what I had done to myself, and so I came back to OA. And I started using a little bit of what I learned from the past, and I was able to get a little, color back in my skin and feel a little bit better and all that stuff. But all I was able to really do is maintain an unhealthy lifestyle. I didn't get worse. In other words, I was able to just kind of taper off here and not go above that. But here wasn't really great, but it was better than here, and I hung on to that for a while. Yeah. I still didn't get a sponsor though. I never really worked the program. I didn't know anything about the steps or the traditions, or the concepts or the tools or the principles. I didn't have a relationship with a higher power, or I didn't have spirituality. I didn't have religion. I didn't have anything, but I knew that I could come to program, so I did. And it wasn't until 1994, I met this man named Conrad in program, and he offered to sponsor me and take me through the steps, and I accepted his invitation, and we went through those steps, and that actually was dramatically positive. I mean, it was like overwhelmingly positive. That feeling of working with somebody, of having structure of some kind, accountability, discipline. I mean, I didn't realize how much I loved those things, and how much those things did not exist in my life, not around the food, especially in other areas as well. As a result of the food, everything is kind of, my whole world was just like really horrible. But, the structure and the accountability and the discipline that sponsorship provided, it was like, oh my gosh, now I understand what you guys are talking about. This is amazing. And I followed the guy's direction on a daily basis, and it was easy for me to do so because he was awesome. They say, find somebody who has what you want, ask how it was achieved. I wanted everything this guy, I wanted to be him. I wanted to be Conrad, really, honestly, because he seemed like everybody loved this guy. He was going to college at the time and school, and he was in AA. He came from Alcoholics Anonymous, and then he was several hundred pounds overweight, and he came in, he lost all his weight in OA. He'd been in for 3 years at this point in recovery. And, he had an awesome truck. I had a piece of shit car. He was dating like half of California. I would like to date the other half, please. I'm super lonely. That would be amazing. And he was very charismatic, and I was like, I just wanted to be him. So I, not only did I follow his direction, I copied him. I started talking like him. And he had a back issue. He had a back injury years ago. And so he had a different way of walking. I copied that too. I literally wanted to be this guy. I just idolized him. And especially how he was treated. And he was like, in my eyes, he was treated like royalty in fellowship, like, oh my gosh, Conrad's coming, that kind of thing. And so I followed this guy's direction. I was with him for about a year. I lost a bunch of weight, and, he said, you should go back to school. I went back to school. He said, cut up your credit cards and stop being in debt. I said, cool, I'll do that too. And, Whatever he said, I was like, I'm not feeling good. I can't go to a meeting. He goes, I don't give a shit. Get over here. Pick me up. We're going to go to LA. We're going to go to a meeting right now. I was like, okay. And yeah, it was fantastic. It was fantastic for that year. And like I said, I lost a bunch of weight, and I'd go to meetings and I'd share my story, and people would come up afterwards and they would compliment me, wow, Eric, you lost a lot of weight. You look fantastic. And I was like, yeah, I know. I'm freaking gorgeous. Look at me. And they would say, wow, what you said was really impactful, and it really it's a game changer. I'm so glad that you shared this with me. And I'm like, I know. Right. And, cause my words are amazing and they can obviously heal people. And then, that was the beginning of my relapse. I started accepting the credit for God's work in my life, and then that was over. That was the beginning of the end. And I didn't even know it, I didn't know, because the disease, how, they say it's cunning, baffling, and powerful. I didn't know.
Yes.
I didn't know what was going down. But then, shortly after, these meetings that I was going to, where I was getting these compliments, I started accepting these compliments as my own, because I did all the work, don't you know? It was all me. It had nothing to do with anybody. Even God had nothing to do with this. This was mine. I did this. I accomplished this. Yeah. All I can accomplish, honestly, is isolating compulsively overeating. That's what I take credit for that. But taking credit for everything else, that was the end. And then what happened was I graduated. I fired my sponsor. I fired Conrad. I fired you. I fired OA. And eventually I left. That doesn't mean I never came back. I came back to meetings every once in a while, but I was never dedicated to this programming, like I was in that brief moment in time that I was working with Conrad and with the sponsor, for a time I was able to keep up the pretense. I was able to, with my skills as a diet professional, if you will, I was able to hold on to the diet that I was on, because it was no longer a food plan. It was a diet now, and the belief that, although I might be putting on a little weight, it's going to be okay because I'm awesome, Eric, because you told me I'm awesome, Eric. So it must be true. And even if I put on more weight, I'll be able to lose the weight because it's so easy to do, and then, I guess I fell off a cliff at one point and just, fell deep into the sea of depression and anxiety and fear and resentment. And just like, it was just like that, I was completely out of control. And in a short time, I put on so much weight. For just a brief time, I was actually impressed how much weight I was able to put on in such a short amount of time. And my diseased mind kept saying to me, it's going to be okay, man. You're going to, you know how to work this program. It's going to be okay. Should I go back to OA? Absolutely not. Don't do that. You got this. You got this.
Why would I want to do
that? Yeah, geez, they might ask me to do something. Nobody wants that,
Exactly.
Yeah. So I came back in 2005, and at that point I was 540 pounds. And honestly, I didn't come back to OA for any other reason but one. I didn't want to have to purchase a wheelchair. It got to the point where, because my body couldn't keep up with the weight gain, that it's going to get time. It's time. I can't even go to the kitchen and wash the dishes because there's too much gravity in there, and it's all centered in my lower back. So, yeah. I if I had a wheelchair, I can get around my little apartment and do the things that I needed to do, but it was, it was so bad. I couldn't fit into my car anymore. I had to buy clothes from something called a king size catalog because big and tall wasn't big and tall enough any longer, and I couldn't shower every day for the same reason. I couldn't wash dishes because there's too much gravity on this planet, and it's all centered in my lower back. It's so painful. People that are overweight, don't understand what it's like to be morbidly obese. There's a difference, morbidly obese. Yeah. It's painful all the time. And it makes me angry because of the pain, the wounded animal kind of syndrome, And anybody that reaches out to help me, I'm biting their hand off. It's not because I hate you. It's because I'm in pain. Physically, it hurts, and it translates for me to frustration and anger right away. You know, and I get angry really easily when I'm in pain. You know, and so yeah, it's something that, you know, it makes it very difficult for me to want to do anything good for myself if I'm in pain to begin with. I mean, back then it wasn't Zoom meetings, you know, or podcasts. It was, you have to get in your car and go someplace to be in a meeting. You know, that's painful. Just the walk to your car,
right?
Because when you get to where you need to be, you're going to have to get up and walk again. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh. And then they've chosen the most uncomfortable chairs to sit on at these meetings, you know,
with arms,
horrible chairs. Oh yeah. With arms that they crush you in like a vice. It's yeah. So I'm not motivated to go to OA meetings, you know, but I came back in 2005 for that reason. I just, at 35, I didn't want to have to be in a wheelchair to maintain my mobility. That's it. That's the only reason I came back. Nothing else. I thought if I came back to OA and get a sponsor, maybe I can lose weight like I did back in 95, you know, and then I'll leave. I won't bother you guys anymore. I'll just lose my weight quietly and leave. That's it. Mm-hmm. And what happened was I got a sponsor, and about 2.5 to 3 months into that relationship, which I thought a waste of time, the obsession with food was lifted. And I'd never felt like that before. I mean, I'm still over 500 pounds at this point, but I wasn't thinking about food in that moment. I always think about food. In our program in Overeaters Anonymous, a lot of meetings will say, please don't mention a specific food type because it's triggering, right? Talking about food is not a trigger for me. Consciousness is a trigger for me. Yeah. As soon as I'm awake and aware, I'm activated. Yeah. You know, and food is what I need right now, you know? Mm-hmm. And so not having that, being awake and aware and conscious and not having that pull, that drive to run to the food because I need to, you know, start my day. I need to survive the next few seconds. Where's my food? That was not there, you know? And because of that, I stayed. Because of that, then in that moment, I had a belief in God because I know for a fact that did not come from me. You know, in all of my life, I've never felt like that before. You know, I called my sponsor right away and I was in tears and I was like, hey man, I was in South Dakota for the biker rally that they have once a year. I was in my truck in front of this place called Cadillac Jack's. It's a casino, and a casino is food. They got, but I know there's gambling, but I don't care about that. They got food. And I wasn't thinking about that.
Exactly.
And that was a game changer for me. So I stayed. I didn't leave. And I was able to, you know, from that build a strong foundation and a relationship with God. And that's what's been happening since that day. You know, I haven't, that obsession has not returned in the past 16 years. I've maintained a 352 pound weight loss. And,
that's awesome, Eric. That's
and
really
my
awesome.
life is, yeah, it is. It's freaking awesome, isn't it? You know, because of God. I don't take credit for 1 second of my recovery today. I take credit for isolating and compulsively overeating and spinning out of control to the point where I'm going to need a wheelchair to maintain mobility. I excel at that. But this, without God in my life, it's just not possible. You know, this is the only thing that's ever made any kind of change in my life that's sustainable and real. And it doesn't need me to make it happen. I just need to follow my sponsor's direction one day at a time, you know, and every day I wake up, I think it's amazing that I even want to continue doing this, you know, because although it's nice to be in this life, in this body, in this world right now, I've been in my disease for much longer than I've been in recovery, you know. So each day I wake up with, you know, dark thoughts and dark feelings, and you know, and when I'm start to move around, I'm like, okay, what do I do now? I'm supposed to text my sponsor my food before I eat it. So, okay, I'm starting to do that. And there's text messages coming in. I better check those. There's a people from program, and somebody calls me and I pick up the phone. I've got to pick up my big book, and I got to read 5 pages out of this, and I got to send that to my sponsor. And, and I have a meeting tonight. I got to make sure I make it on time to the meeting. And, you know, like this is where my brain goes, starts in the darkness, and then it goes right into the program, because I have structure and accountability and discipline around this. I have something to do today when I wake up, you know, and because of God, it's important to me. And God isn't really, don't take this the wrong way, but it's not really relevant to recovery. You don't have to believe in God to be in recovery. It just, this is something that happened to me. Yeah. But there's people that are in recovery that have no relationship with God whatsoever. In fact, if you say God, it kind of pisses them off. Yeah. You know, so it's not really relevant to recovery.
Oh yes, I know that.
It's just something that I was drawn to, you know, because I have to give the credit to something. It definitely wasn't me. I don't have the ability to even talk to you right now. You know, this is contrary to my nature to interact with people. I like to stay by myself, you know, and eat. That's what I like. That for me, that's Disneyland. You know,
yeah, exactly.
but I have a higher power working in my life that, you know, gets me ramped up and excited to be around other people and to, you know, enjoy my day and to be of service to others. And, you know, and I think too, that's the most important thing that I received. Well, other than having the obsession removed, that's the number one thing really. But, you know, another great gift is that I can carry this message, that I can be of service to others, because I was useless to everybody, including myself, forever. It seemed, you know, all my life, just, what a waste. You know, I was born into this world, and I have this body that you can utilize. Somebody can take this body of mine and, you know, maybe you can go be the president, you know, or a doctor or something. I wasn't using it though. I just watched television and I ate. You know, if somebody come to me and said, "Hey, Eric, I'm going to need your body if you're not using it," I'll be like, "Yeah, here, take it, man. I'm just freaking dying here. So yeah, if you could do something with this, here, take it." You know, I would have happily given my life for my father. Yeah. He loved to work. You know, he was a contractor in construction. You know, if I could change places with him, he would have been just like crushing it all these years. You know, and providing for people and having a great time and just really enjoying his life. I sat in a room next to a glowing box for years after I became an adult, and I was able to do so. You know, that was, you know, I mean, I had to go to work. I had to have some kind of relationships because there's too many people on this planet not to. But if it was me, if it was my choice, that's all that it would be. Isolate, compulsively overeat, and the next day do the same thing until you die. You know? So today I'm actually using this body that I was given, and I can be of service to people, and I can be of service to myself for me because of the relationship with God. You know? That's the center of my universe right now. That's the everything for me right now, you know, because each day I know that he's real, because each day I'm doing things that are against my nature. If I'm not isolating, compulsively overeating, all the credit for that goes to God. You know, I take credit for isolating, compulsively overeating. I'll take credit for anything else because that's not my motivation, you know? So yeah, that's my story, man. That's what's up with me. You know, I've been back for the past 16 years. And nothing's changed in the relationship with my sponsor. I still follow my sponsor's direction, at least for today. I don't know about tomorrow. Maybe tomorrow I'm just like, you know what? I'm out of here. I don't know. I'm not God, but for today, I think it's okay for me to hang around.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome, Eric. I really appreciate doing this. You've been inspiration to me as well. When I just got into the program, your name started coming up a lot because I was large like you and you got in the program. And they're like, you consider G. Like, what is he, God? Because you've lost so much to lose as well. And see why they wanted me to meet you. That's for sure. And I guess I do a question for you is like for you and me, what would you say to the person like you and me when we're getting into the considered OA and we're looking at, we got and like you say to convince somebody to click on or go to a meeting, what because it's like when I look at first I'm like, this is impossible. But once you get around the program, you find it's possible. So I guess what I'm trying to say, what would you tell somebody that's on the fence? It's thinking, well, maybe I want to do it, maybe I don't want to do it.
Yeah. I think that's just very common, Gary, when people coming in, it's not clear immediately whether or not this is a good fit. And we just recommend that you try 6 meetings. I mean, that's a standard, statement. You'll hear at all the meetings
right.
when with regards to newcomers. Yes. And newcomers, they contact me all the time and I tell them the same thing. Cause some of them, they're like you say, or they're on the fence, and others are just like, I want to do this right now. What step do we start with? And
that was me once I got in.
So, yeah. What I recommend is that I would say you try 6 meetings, and maybe it's not a good fit for you, and maybe it is, but give it a shot. Try a few meetings, and then but keep in touch with me in the interim. Call me every day. Let me know how you're doing. You don't have to talk about your food or whatever, or if you want to talk about your food, let's have a connection though, so that you're not just, waiting for a couple of days to pass and then you go into a meeting, start talking to the people. And, I think that if you talk to the people that are in the fellowship and you're going to a few meetings, it'll help you to decide for yourself whether this is what you really want to do, Right. And it's I have a hidden agenda too when I'm talking to newcomers, because I know what they don't know. And what I know is that if they do go to those meetings and they do make a connection, that there's going to be a seed that's planted deep into their head, and it's going to start to grow. And when their disease has beat them into a state of complete hopelessness, that's when that seed's going to sprout, and they're going to say, maybe I should check out an OA meeting.
Yes.
And that's when, we can really be of maximum benefit to that person. They come back, I tried it. I didn't know if I was going to come back or not, but it got really bad. That's the motivation for generally everybody to work a strong program, is to get your ass handed to you by your disease.
Yes.
There comes a breaking point for a lot of us where we're just like, this is no longer acceptable. And I don't know what to do with myself. That's all I got. This is no longer acceptable, and I'm lost. I don't know even where to begin, and coming in with big numbers like you and I did. Yeah. I mean, I'm looking around the room. There's face-to-face meetings when I came back, of course. This is pre-COVID. I look around the room, and just like in school, I'm the freaking biggest kid in class again. Yeah. Thanks, God. Yes. Thank you for this life. This is awesome. Everywhere I go, I'm the biggest kid in class. Great. Right. So I'm still in that rage, that anger. Is like self-defeated mode, and it is. I'm not going to lie. It's a deterrent for recovery. It's hard. It's hard to overcome my brain. But I think that again, once that seed is planted, in that defeated place that we find ourselves in, likely you're going to stick around, because when you come to OA, I think you've already exhausted every avenue or idea that you wanted to utilize to fix yourself.
It's the last house on the block.
There's nothing else. I mean, I guess kill yourself, but generally
Yeah.
as compulsive overeaters, we don't do that. I don't want to say that we're cowards, but we are afraid to do. I'm okay with eating pizza until I die, but I don't want to put a gun in my mouth. It just doesn't
Exactly. That's not
there's no,
tasty.
yeah. Let's just have some food. Let's see how it goes.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, Eric, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. And is there anything else you'd like to share or?
Yeah, just, if you think that you've got a problem, likely you do. If you go to a meeting and you think, do I belong here? Likely you do, because you showed up,
Mhm.
So just let that spin around in your noodle for a little bit before you actually make a decision on whether or not you should stay, and try not to compare yourself with other people. I came in with big numbers. It doesn't really matter, though. You don't have a problem with food or weight. You never have. You have a problem with the way you think, the way you act, the way you behave. Absolutely. Right. We call that in program, they call that a spiritual malady. And the only way to overcome your spiritual malady is to straighten out mentally and physically. But you have to overcome your spiritual malady first, Right. And quite simply, without having to find out what all of those big words means, is just get a sponsor and follow direction when you're ready. That's all that means. You overcome your spiritual malady when you get a sponsor and start following direction, because the direction that you've been following all this time has been killing you.
Yes.
And it's going to get worse. And if you think it can't get worse, then it can. It can go past the point that you can quantify. You can't fathom how bad it can be. Because you think that there's a top, there's an end. There is no end except for death.
Exactly.
We can really do some damage to these bodies that we've been given.
Yes. And I have.
Yes. But the truth is that you don't have to.
Right.
One day at a time. You never have to abuse yourself with food ever again. And it is abuse, by the way. Don't ever think comfort or reward when it comes to this, because you've never woken up the next day after a massive binge the night before and thought to yourself, that was fantastic.
Let's do it again.
Great. Yeah. No, you feel
it's okay for that 2 to 5 minutes. The 2 to 5 minutes that the food gives you that pleasure, it's great. But after that, it's hell.
Yeah. After the 2 to 5 minutes, you're still eating only because it's there. There's not even any flavor left in the thing.
Exactly. But it's
there's still more. Well, okay. Right. I'm just going to finish this. There's still, okay. I'll finish that too.
Yep. I got a clean plate, Yeah. Can't waste food. Well, Eric, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. And I think your story is going to help change a lot of people's lives.
Right on, my man. Right on. I hope so.
No, I know you're an inspiration to me.